History as we know it starts after the flood. Everything before that time, if it even happened, is called myth, made-up stories, or fake. But what if that ancient flood was real? And what if it didn't just wipe out small villages of hunters and people gathering food, but entire cities, systems, and knowledge that was way more advanced than we can imagine? All around the world, people who never met each other tell the same story. A golden age that was destroyed by something falling from the sky, followed by rising waters that covered everything. But when the waters went down, a new world started. But it was haunted by echoes of what came before. Ruins with wrong dates, monuments credited to the wrong people, and myths dismissed as accidents may actually be broken pieces of a forgotten time. A civilization not just older, but more connected to the forces of Earth and space. One that understood sound waves, shapes, and the deep language of the planet itself. What if the past we've lost is the key to a future we haven't built yet? This is Historic Sleep. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right, and let me know in the comments where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. The Earth has a way of keeping secrets, wrapping them in layers of dirt, stone, and mud, and only showing them to people who know how to look. But when you peel back those layers, what do you find? For hundreds of years, we have looked to ancient stories to understand where we came from. Myths, legends, and tales passed down through many generations. But what if the stories are not just fairy tales, but memories? What if they are echoes of a lost civilization, one far more advanced than the world we know today? We have all heard of the Great Flood, the biblical flood that swept over the earth, erasing almost everything. But the flood is not just a story told in religious books. It exists in the myths of many cultures, each with its own version of the disaster. In Mesopotamia, it was Utnapishtim who survived the flood, building a great boat to carry his family and the seeds of life. In Hindu tradition, Manu was saved by a fish god, while the Maya, the Greeks, the Norse, and the Chinese all have their own versions of the flood. The flood, it seems, is not just one event. It is a global memory. But what did the flood wash away? What if, in addition to humanity's earliest civilizations, it also erased something far greater? Evidence from ancient ruins around the world suggests that a highly advanced civilization existed long before the rise of the societies we recognize as the cradle of civilization. What if the flood didn't just wash away human lives, but wiped out an entire way of life, a forgotten world of incredible knowledge and technology? In places like the channeled scablands of Washington, strange shapes in the land suggest a violent disaster. The rough land looks like the aftermath of a massive war or some otherworldly destruction. Rivers that no longer flow, valleys carved deep into the earth, and massive ripples etched into solid rock all hint at an event of unimaginable force. Scientists once struggled to explain these features until a man named J. Harlan Bretz proposed a wild theory in the 1920s, suggested that the scablands were shaped by a disaster flood, one that was so violent it reshaped the entire landscape in a matter of days. But Bretz's theory was laughed at by his peers. It wasn't until decades later with satellite pictures and more evidence that his ideas were accepted. This was no ordinary flood. It was a global reset, a sudden violent event that swept across the earth, erasing everything in its path. If the scablands were carved by such a flood, then what about the rest of the world? What other ancient cities, monuments, and civilizations were buried beneath the floodwaters? The flood, as described in the ancient myths, was not just a local disaster, it was a planetary event. A disaster that reshaped the Earth's surface and wiped away the remains of a forgotten civilization. If that civilization existed, where are its traces? Could it be that the evidence lies buried beneath the earth, hidden in the structures that challenge our current understanding of history? Giant stone monuments scattered across the world provide a tantalizing clue. In places like Egypt, South America, and Southeast Asia, massive stone structures lie partially buried under the earth, their original purpose and builders unknown. These sites, like the Assyrian in Egypt or the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, feature blocks of stone that are far larger and more advanced than the tools and techniques of the cultures that later lived there. Some of these blocks weigh hundreds of tons and are cut with such accuracy that modern engineers can hardly copy the craftsmanship. Could these ancient structures be the remains of a civilization that existed before the flood? A civilization that had knowledge and technology far beyond what we understand today. And if so, what happened to it? Was it destroyed in the flood or did it vanish without a trace, leaving only these remains as a ghostly echo of what once was? In Bolivia, the ruins of Pumapunku offer another clue. The accuracy of the stonework with interlocking blocks and sharp angles suggests that the builders were no primitive people, but a society with advanced engineering knowledge. Yet the history books tell us that the percented civilization that built Pumapunku was a pre-Incan culture, one that had no known connection to the advanced tools needed to shape the stones. How could a society without modern tools accomplish such feats of engineering? It is this mystery, the mystery of these ancient structures, that points to a forgotten civilization, one that was erased by the flood. But if such a civilization existed, Where are its other remains? Could the floodwaters have hidden them from our view, buried beneath the oceans, or deep within the earth? In the search for answers, one of the most interesting theories is the idea of the lost civilization of Mu, described by 19th-century archaeologist Augustus Laplace. Mu was believed to be a vast continent that existed long before the rise of the great civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. According to Laplace, Mu was home to a highly advanced civilization that had knowledge far beyond its time. But what happened to Mu? Was it swallowed by the flood, leaving no trace behind? James Churchward, a British writer, further developed the theory of Mu, claiming that he had discovered ancient tablets that provided evidence of the civilization's existence. These tablets, according to Churchward, contained detailed accounts of Mu's advanced technology and culture, but skeptics questioned whether Churchward's findings were real. And without solid evidence, the theory of Mu faded into obscurity. Yet, the Moai statues of Easter Island continue to raise questions about the true origins of this ancient civilization. These towering stone figures, which were built with such accuracy that modern engineers still marvel at their craftsmanship, seem to suggest that the Rapa Nui people inherited their knowledge from an earlier civilization. But who were these ancestors, and how did they have such advanced knowledge? Could they be the survivors of a pre-flood civilization, passing down their knowledge to later generations? As we dig deeper into the mysteries of the past, one thing becomes clear. The flood did not just destroy cities. It destroyed entire systems of knowledge and understanding. The civilizations that survived the flood may have rebuilt, but they did so with only fragments of the lost wisdom that once existed. And what if the knowledge of the pre-flood civilization wasn't just about building monuments or creating art? It was about something far more deep, something that could reshape our understanding of the world itself. As we continue to search for the lost pieces of this forgotten civilization, we are left with more questions than answers. But the evidence is there, hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. The flood may have erased much, but it could not erase everything. The secrets of the lost civilization are out there waiting for those brave enough to uncover them. The world as we know it is built on the foundations of countless civilizations, each one rising and falling, leaving behind fragments of their existence. But what if some of those fragments don't belong to the civilizations we've been taught about? What if there's a forgotten history, one that came before everything we think we know? As we stand on the edge of modern discovery, we are beginning to uncover evidence of a lost world. A world that was nearly erased from memory by the Great Flood. Around the globe, strange remains exist, structures, artifacts, and ruins that challenge the conventional timeline of human history. Consider the mysterious site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a massive stone complex that has been dated to over 11,000 years ago. That's a full 7,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids. Göbekli Tepe's precisely carved pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, suggest a level of building and engineering skill that was thought to be impossible for such an ancient time. No simple hunter-gatherers could have built such a site. Yet mainstream history insists that this is exactly what these people were. The idea of an advanced society capable of such feats of construction challenges the very foundation of our understanding, and Göbekli Tepe is far from unique. Across the world, we find other sites that appear to be older than any recognized civilization. In Bolivia, Pumapunku stands as another example of lost knowledge. Massive stone blocks, carefully cut and interlocked with stunning accuracy, are scattered across the site. Some blocks are estimated to weigh up to 130 tons, and yet the civilization credited with building Pumapunku is said to have lacked the tools capable of shaping such heavy stones. This raises a troubling question. If these civilizations couldn't have built these structures, then who did? These structures don't just suggest advanced engineering, they suggest something far more deep, a deep understanding of the natural world, an understanding that seems to have been lost over time. It's as though the people who built these sites were not simply surviving, but thriving in ways that we are just beginning to understand. How could such knowledge vanish so completely? Could it be that the flood, as described in ancient texts, swept away not just cities and people, but entire systems of knowledge, leaving only these mysterious ruins behind? In ancient Egypt, a similar mystery arises around the Osirian, an underground temple that came before the famous pyramids. The Osirian's construction is unlike any other Egyptian structure, with massive stone blocks and detailed designs that suggest a much older origin. Even more puzzling is the fact that the Osirian's blocks are cut and arranged with an exactness that surpasses even the later dynasty temples of Egypt. Could this temple have been built by a civilization that existed before the flood? And if so, what other ancient sites now buried or underwater might hold the same mysteries? It's not just in Egypt and South America that we find these strange things. In places like Baalbek, Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter stands as a monument to a forgotten age. The temple's foundations are made of trilithon stones, massive blocks weighing over 800 tons each. Mainstream archaeology credits these stones to the Romans, but their construction techniques were nowhere near advanced enough to move and place such enormous blocks. Could these stones be remains of an even older civilization, one that was erased by the flood, leaving behind only these massive markers as proof of their power. The flood, as the ancient myths described, was not just a regional event. It was a planetary catastrophe, one that reshaped the very surface of the earth, and the evidence of its effects can still be seen in the remains of these lost civilizations. Whether it's the giant stone blocks of Pumapunk, the precisely carved pillars of Gagech, or the massive trilithon stones of Baalbek, we are left with a haunting question. What happened to the knowledge and technology that these civilizations had? Was it lost forever, wiped away by the flood, or did it survive in some form, waiting to be rediscovered? To answer these questions, we must look not just at the ruins, but also at the stories that have been passed down through the ages. In ancient cultures, there are tales of gods and giants, of beings who came from the stars and gave wisdom to humanity. The Sumerians, for instance, tell of the a race of deities who came down from the heavens to teach humans the secrets of civilization. Could these beings have been the survivors of the lost civilization, or perhaps the ones who helped restart civilization after the flood? The Sumerians also left behind a vast collection of writings, many of which describe advanced knowledge in fields such as astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. The Sumerians were not the first to discover the stars. Their knowledge was passed down from an earlier age, one that was lost in the flood. This knowledge didn't come from nowhere. It had to come from somewhere or from someone. In the ancient temples of Egypt, we find carvings that show strange devices, some looking like what appear to be modern light bulbs, or even electric lamps. The Dendera lights, as they are called, are found on the walls of the Hathor temple at Dendera. The images clearly show what looks like a light bulb, complete with a filament and a socket. These carvings suggest that the ancient Egyptians had knowledge of electricity far beyond what we have traditionally believed. But where did this knowledge come from? Could it be a piece of the lost civilization? A glimpse of the technology that existed before the flood? These mysteries don't just challenge our understanding of ancient history, they force us to reconsider the very nature of human progress. If a civilization existed before the flood that was capable of such advanced knowledge and technology, then what does that say about our own history? Are we truly the first advanced civilization on Earth? Or are we simply building upon the remains of a much older world, a world that was wiped away in the flood? As we continue to uncover the evidence, we are left with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear: the flood was not just a myth, and the civilization it destroyed was not just a story, it was real. And as we dig deeper into the earth, we may yet uncover the lost knowledge of the world that came before us, in the silence of forgotten ruins. The past whispers to us, if we are willing to listen. There is a faint hum beneath the surface of our modern world, a vibration that carries the echoes of a time long gone, yet still lingering in the stones, the earth, and the myths. Ancient civilizations, many of which we only know through the stories they left behind, have all but vanished from the historical record. But what if they didn't vanish entirely? What if they were wiped from memory, not by time, but by something far more catastrophic? Throughout history, we've been taught that the first great civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, were the starting points of human progress. But the more we look into the ancient world, the more it becomes clear that there are gaps in our understanding, gaps that suggest something much older, something far more advanced might have existed before these civilizations. Take the city of Dwarka, for example, a place that has existed only in the pages of Hindu mythology, long dismissed by scholars as a mere legend. Yet in 2000, marine archaeologists discovered the ruins of an underwater city off the coast of India, exactly where the myth of Dwarka said it would be. The city, buried beneath the waters of the Arabian Sea, was found to contain what appeared to be man-made structures, walls, streets, and what looked like foundations of buildings. Radiocarbon dating placed the city's age at around 9,000 years old, which is far older than any known civilization in India. Could this be the remains of an ancient, forgotten culture? And if so, what happened to it? The discovery of Dwarka is just one of many pieces in a puzzle that is slowly coming together, one that suggests an entirely different timeline of human history. In other parts of the world, we find similar evidence of ancient, advanced civilizations that seem to have been erased by some global catastrophe. In the Gulf of Kohat off the coast of India, marine researchers have discovered large underwater structures, grid-like patterns, streets, and foundations more than 100 feet beneath the surface. Some estimates place these structures at 9,000 years old, coming before the Indus Valley civilization, yet no records exist of the people who built them. These underwater cities aren't just strange things. They are evidence of a much older civilization, one that existed before the flood, before the rise of the cultures we consider to be the first. But what caused their destruction? How did these cities end up underwater? Some researchers suggest that these cities were victims of rising sea levels brought on by melting glaciers at the end of the Ice Age. Others argue that they were wiped out by a sudden catastrophic event, a global flood. But what if the flood wasn't just a natural disaster? What if it was something far more deliberate, an event caused by forces beyond our understanding? Throughout ancient myths, there are stories of gods or beings from the stars who were said to have created or guided humanity. In Sumerian texts, we hear of the Anunnaki, a race of deities who came from the heavens and gave knowledge to humanity. Could these beings have been survivors of the lost civilization, returning to pass on the wisdom that had been almost wiped away by the flood? It's not just in ancient texts that we find hints of this forgotten knowledge. In the artifacts that have survived from the ancient world, we find evidence of advanced technology, knowledge, and craftsmanship that seems to have appeared from nowhere. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device found in a shipwreck off the coast of the island of Antikythera. The mechanism, which dates back to around 100 BC, is a sophisticated analog computer used to predict where stars and planets would be in eclipses. What's remarkable about the Antikythera mechanism is that it represents a level of technology that was thought to be far beyond the capabilities of the ancient Greeks. How could they have built something like this without prior knowledge or influence? Similarly, the ancient Egyptians left behind stunning monuments, such as the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was built with an accuracy that modern engineers still struggle to copy. The pyramid, which was constructed over 4,000 years ago, is aligned with the cardinal directions with an error of only 0.061 degrees. How could a society without modern instruments achieve such accuracy? Was this knowledge passed down from a civilization that existed before the flood? The more we look at these ancient wonders, the more it becomes clear that they were not the work of primitive people. These were the creations of a society that had knowledge and skills that have been lost to us. But where did that knowledge come from? Was it inherited from a civilization that came before the flood? A civilization whose legacy was wiped away by a catastrophic event? As we continue to search for answers, we find that the evidence is everywhere, hidden in the structures we can't explain, the myths we've ignored, and the artifacts we can't quite understand. The flood may have wiped out an entire civilization, but it did not erase all traces of their existence. Those traces are scattered across the earth, waiting to be uncovered. And as we continue to explore these mysteries, we are forced to face a difficult question. If there was a civilization before us, one that was more advanced than our own, what happened to them? Some theorists suggest that the survivors of this lost civilization may have been forced to rebuild from scratch, passing down what little knowledge they could remember from the time before the flood. This could explain why so many ancient cultures seem to share similar myths and stories, all pointing to a time when the world was far different, and far more advanced than we can imagine. Perhaps these survivors became the gods and heroes of ancient myths, the ones who taught humanity the basics of civilization, only to have their true history buried under layers of time and myth. The remains of this lost civilization may still be waiting to be uncovered, hidden beneath the oceans or buried in the earth. What if the knowledge they had, advanced mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and more, was not lost, but simply waiting for us to rediscover it? The flood may have taken much from us, but it could not erase everything. The secrets of the past are still out there, waiting to be uncovered, and as we continue to search, we may one day unlock the mysteries of a civilization that was lost to time. The deeper we dig, the further we uncover traces of an ancient world buried beneath the soil and the sea. Each layer of dirt, each underwater city holds a secret of a time long forgotten. We may not yet fully understand how much destruction was caused by the flood, but the clues are there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to figure them out. What if everything we've been taught about the rise of civilizations is wrong? What if humanity's true origins lie in the remains of an ancient world that was not just older, but more advanced than what we have ever imagined? Consider the discovery of Yonaguni, an underwater site off the coast of Japan. It is a place that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. The formation, which lies more than 100 feet beneath the ocean's surface, consists of massive square-cut terraces, platforms, and what appear to be stone structures. Some parts of the site even look like pyramids, and others have sharp right angles, making it look more like a man-made structure than a natural formation. Despite this, mainstream archaeologists argue that Yonaguni is a result of natural erosion, but many independent researchers and divers who have spent time exploring the site are not so sure. The accuracy of the stonework, the geometry of the formations, and the unmistakable signs of human craftsmanship suggest that Yonaguni could be the remains of a forgotten city, a city that sank beneath the waves long before the rise of known ancient civilizations. If Yonaguni was built by a civilization that existed before the flood, what other evidence is there of similarly advanced societies that have been swallowed by the oceans? And if these sites are truly man-made, what do they tell us about the people who built them? Did they have knowledge and skills that were lost in the flood, or did they simply vanish, their legacy erased by the catastrophe? Yonaguni is just one example of the many underwater ruins that hint at the existence of a global civilization that was lost to time. In the Bahamas, off the coast of Bimini, there are underwater structures that appear to form a road or pathway, perfectly aligned stone blocks arranged in what looks like a straight line. The Bimini Road, as it is called, has long been a subject of debate. While mainstream science dismisses it as a natural formation, many believe that it is the remains of an ancient sunken city, possibly the mythical Atlantis. The story of Atlantis, first told by the Greek philosopher Plato, describes a powerful civilization that existed around 9,000 years ago, before sinking beneath the waves in a single catastrophic event. According to Plato, Atlantis was a highly advanced society with a sophisticated culture and technology that far surpassed anything known to the ancient Greeks. Could the Bimini Road, along with other underwater sites around the world, be the remains of this lost civilization? If so, what happened to Atlantis? Was it destroyed by the flood as many ancient cultures believe? Or did it fall victim to some other disaster, its memory passed down through myth? The idea that Atlantis or some other lost civilization existed before the flood is not just the stuff of legend. It is a theory that is gaining more support as new evidence continues to surface. As technology improves, researchers are able to look deeper into the oceans, scanning the seafloor for signs of ancient structures. In places like the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and the Indian Ocean, underwater cities are being uncovered, each one adding weight to the theory that a highly advanced civilization once covered the globe. But as these discoveries are made, they raise even more questions. If these cities existed, why didn't they survive? What kind of disaster could have wiped them out so completely? Some researchers point to the possibility of a global flood, one that flooded coastlines, submerged cities, and caused massive destruction. According to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a comet or asteroid impact around 12,800 years ago triggered a sudden and dramatic shift in the Earth's climate. This event could have caused widespread flooding, melting ice sheets, and changing sea levels. That such a flood would have submerged coastal cities, leaving only traces of their existence buried beneath the waves. But this theory doesn't just explain the destruction of cities, it also offers an explanation for the sudden disappearance of an advanced civilization. If a catastrophic flood wiped out these cities, it would explain why so much knowledge was lost. The survivors of the flood, if any remained, would have been forced to rebuild from scratch, carrying with them only fragments of the lost knowledge. Over time, that knowledge would have been passed down through spoken traditions, myths, and legends. But the true extent of the civilization's achievements would have been forgotten. In many ancient cultures, there are stories of survivors who carried with them the wisdom of a lost world. In the Bible, Noah and his family are said to have been the only survivors of the flood, carrying with them the seeds of all living things. In the Hindu tradition, Manu is warned by a fish god about the coming flood, and he too survives with the knowledge of the past. These stories found in cultures around the world may be more than just myth. They may be memories of a time when humanity was not just surviving but thriving with a deep understanding of the natural world and the cosmos. The flood, as described in these myths, wasn't just a cleansing of the earth, it was the end of an age. It wiped away a civilization that had reached the height of its knowledge and power, leaving behind only the faintest traces of its existence. But those traces are still with us today. The pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles of Stonehenge, the ancient temples of Southeast Asia, all of these structures point to a lost civilization, one that was far more advanced than we are taught to believe. And yet we are left with more questions than answers. How could a civilization so advanced be wiped away so completely? Was the flood truly a natural event, or was it a man-made catastrophe? What happened to the knowledge and technology that this civilization had? And most importantly, what if we are not the first advanced civilization on Earth? What if we are simply standing on the shoulders of giants, rebuilding from the remains of a long-forgotten world? As we continue to search for answers, we are confronted with the mystery of the flood, a mystery that may never be fully solved. But the search for the lost civilization continues. Every discovery, every ancient site uncovered brings us one step closer to understanding the true history of our world. And one day, perhaps we will uncover the secrets that have been buried for thousands of years. Secrets that could change everything we know about the past and about our place in the grand story of human history. What if the stories of gods and giants that we find in ancient texts are not the inventions of early storytellers, but the distant echoes of a time when humanity shared the earth with beings of remarkable height, intelligence, and power? In cultures across the globe, myths speak of giants, beings of extraordinary strength, wisdom, and size, who ruled the land before vanishing, leaving only their legends behind. But what if these giants were not merely mythological? What if they were the survivors of a lost civilization that came before the flood? And what if their fall marked the end of an era of knowledge and enlightenment? From the ancient Greeks to the Norse, from the Bible to the Hindu Vedas, the stories of giants are remarkably consistent. In Greek mythology, the Titans were the first beings who came before the gods of Olympus. They were said to have immense power and knowledge but were overthrown by the Olympian gods in a great battle. The Norse also have their tales of Jotnar, or giants, who once roamed the earth before being cast out by the gods. In the Bible, there are references to the offspring of angels and humans who were described as giants, possessing great strength and wisdom before being wiped from the earth in the flood. But what if these giants were not just mythical creatures, but real beings who were part of an advanced civilization that existed long before the rise of the known world? Could they have been the original builders of the great stone structures that still puzzle modern archaeologists? What if the flood, far from being a simple act of divine punishment, was actually a catastrophic event that wiped out an entire race of beings who were far more advanced than we are today? The concept of giants is not limited to Western mythology. In the ancient traditions of the Americas, there are also stories of giant beings who once roamed the earth. Native American tribes speak of the ancient ones, a race of giants who lived on the land before humanity. In the Andes, the legends of the Incas tell of a race of giant beings who were said to have built the great stone structures of the region, including the mysterious fortress of Sacsayhuaman. The accuracy with which these stones were cut and fitted together without the use of mortar has long puzzled archaeologists who cannot explain how such massive blocks could have been moved and arranged with such accuracy by a primitive civilization. Similar stories of giants can be found in the myths of ancient Egypt. The pyramids of Giza, the most famous of the stone structures, were built with such accuracy that they continue to challenge explanation. The sheer size of the project and the accuracy of the construction suggest that the builders had a knowledge and skill that far exceeded that of the ancient Egyptians. Could the pyramids have been built by a race of giants who existed before the flood, whose knowledge and technology were lost in the disaster? In Southeast Asia, the ancient site of Angkor Wat in Cambodia presents another mystery. The detailed carvings and huge architecture of the temple complex are proof of an advanced civilization, yet the knowledge required to build such a structure seems to have vanished over time. The Khmer Empire, which constructed Angkor Wat, is said to have been the last civilization to have the knowledge of the gods. But where did that knowledge come from, and why did it disappear? The fall of these ancient giants, whether literal or symbolic, marks the end of an era when humanity may have been capable of feats that are now beyond our understanding, that as we uncover the ruins of their civilization, we are left with only the faintest traces of their existence. But could the knowledge they had still be hidden, waiting to be rediscovered? Consider the ancient technology that some believe these giants had. The mysterious Antikythera mechanism, for instance, is often cited as evidence that the ancient Greeks had access to knowledge far beyond their time. The device, a complex analog computer, was capable of predicting astronomical events with incredible accuracy. But the existence of such a mechanism raises more questions than answers. How could a civilization with no known advanced technology construct such a device? And if the Greeks were capable of such feats, what other technologies might have existed in the lost civilization before the flood? The flood, as described in the myths, was not just a cleansing of the earth. It was the destruction of an entire age of knowledge and civilization. And the survivors of that catastrophe, if any, would have been left with little more than fragments of the past. The knowledge of the giants, whether they were literal beings or symbolic representations of an advanced race, was lost in the flood, yet the remains of their civilization stay, scattered across the globe in the form of ancient ruins, stone structures, and mysterious artifacts. That as we look to the future, we may one day uncover the final pieces of this lost puzzle. The flood, with all its destruction, may have wiped away much, but it did not erase everything. The giants may be gone, but their legacy lives on in the mysteries they left behind. And as we continue to explore the ruins of their civilization, we may yet uncover the secrets of the past that have been hidden for thousands of years. There is something deeply unsettling about the ancient ruins scattered across the globe. From the towering pyramids of Egypt to the giant temples of Baalbek, the stone circles of Britain to the forgotten city of Machu Picchu, there is a quiet defiance in these structures, an insistence that they are not merely the product of primitive peoples, but the remains of something far greater, something that challenges the conventional understanding of history. That as we look closer into these ancient ruins, we begin to realize that they are not simply monuments to the past, but clues to a forgotten world, a world where humanity, or perhaps beings far more advanced than we are today, had knowledge that we are only beginning to understand. The question that hangs over every discovery is not just how these structures were built, but why they were built and what secrets they might still hold. What if these ancient ruins are not just remains of a lost civilization, but fragments of an even greater truth, truths about the forces that shaped the world, about knowledge that was passed down through the ages, and about the civilization that existed long before the flood? In the ancient world, the lines between science, religion, and magic were often blurred. The construction of huge structures like the Great Pyramid was not just a feat of engineering, it was a spiritual and cosmic act, a show of deep understanding about the forces of nature, the cosmos, and the energy that flows through the earth. Some theorists believe that the builders of these structures were not just constructing buildings, but harnessing the very forces of the universe itself. They may have understood concepts like energy, resonance, and vibration in ways that we are only beginning to grasp. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example. It is a structure that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries. While its sheer size and accuracy are what is even more remarkable is the alignment of the pyramid with the cardinal points. The Great Pyramid is aligned so accurately with true north that it is within a fraction of a degree. But that's not all. The pyramid is also aligned with the stars, particularly the constellation of Orion, which was associated with Osiris. the Egyptian god of the afterlife. This alignment suggests that the pyramid was not just a tomb, but a symbolic gateway to the stars, a cosmic center designed to connect the earth with the heavens. What if the pyramid was not just a physical structure, but a tool that harnessed cosmic energy that tapped into the unseen forces that flow through the universe? Some researchers, like the late John Anthony West, have proposed that the Great Pyramid could have been used as a resonator, amplifying energy through its geometrically precise design. This would explain why such a massive structure would be built with such exact standards. It was not just about creating an impressive monument, but about tapping into a deeper, more profound understanding of the forces that govern the universe. The idea that the ancients had knowledge of energy and resonance is further supported by the discovery of similar structures around the world. The stone site of Pumapunku, for instance, is famous for its massive stone blocks, some weighing as much as 130 tons that are cut with incredible accuracy. The stonework is so fine that it is almost impossible to imagine how it could have been achieved without modern tools. But what if the builders of Pumapunku didn't need modern tools? What if they were using techniques that we have long since forgotten? Techniques that harnessed the power of sound, vibration, and resonance to shape the stones and lift them into place. There are also the ancient temples of Southeast Asia, such as Angkor Wat, and the temple complex of Preah Vihear in Cambodia. These temples built by the Khmer Empire are not just architectural marvels. They are also built on sites that align with celestial events. The temples of Angkor Wat are specifically aligned with the movement of the sun and the stars, suggesting that the builders had an advanced understanding of astronomy and cosmic cycles. The accuracy with which these structures were constructed and the alignment with the heavens points to a deeper knowledge of the forces of nature, a knowledge that may have been passed down from an earlier forgotten civilization. The ancient city of Machu Picchu, nestled high in the Andes Mountains, also holds secrets that are only beginning to be understood. The stonework of Machu Picchu is unlike anything seen in later Incan architecture. The accuracy of the stone cuts, the seamless interlocking of the blocks, and the fitting of massive stones with such precision suggest that the Incas were not simply building with primitive tools, but with knowledge of advanced engineering techniques. In addition, the layout of the city itself is believed to align with the stars, and the structures within the city are positioned to harness the energies of the earth and the cosmos. Could Machu Picchu be a piece of an older, more advanced civilization, one that had a deep understanding of the forces of nature and the cosmos? The evidence is mounting that the ancients knew much more about the natural world than we have given them credit for, and yet this knowledge was lost, buried under the weight of time and catastrophe. The flood, as described in the ancient myths, may have been the trigger that wiped away this knowledge. But the knowledge itself did not disappear entirely. It was preserved in the remains of these ancient structures, in the myths and legends passed down through the ages, and in the traditions of the cultures that survived the disaster. The stories of gods, giants, and divine knowledge may not be mere fairy tales. They may be the echoes of a lost civilization, one that had knowledge and power far beyond anything we have today. And as we continue to search for the truth, we are faced with the haunting realization that the flood did not just destroy cities, it destroyed entire ways of understanding. The survivors of the flood may have rebuilt the world, but they did so with only fragments of the lost knowledge. And now, thousands of years later, we are left to piece together the puzzle, to uncover the secrets that have been buried beneath the earth, the oceans, and the sands of time. As we continue to uncover the mysteries of the ancient world, we must ask ourselves, what knowledge have we lost? And what could we learn if we could rediscover the lost wisdom of the past? Perhaps in the ruins of ancient cities and the stones of forgotten temples, the answers are waiting for us to find them. There is something eerie in how many cultures remember the flood, not merely as destruction, but as a reset. Not just the wiping of landscapes and the drowning of cities, but the erasure of memory itself, like a cosmic reset button had been pressed, tearing history from its continuity. When myth after myth starts at the same point after the waters went down, it becomes less a coincidence and more a deliberate marker, a scar left across the collective mind of humanity. It forces us to ask who pressed that button, and why. The flood was not just an event of drowning, it was an act of forgetting. Before the waters came, the world was, according to these myths, full of things we can't recognize now. Gods that walked among men, technologies that bent nature, cities that glowed with lights not from fire. But afterward, silence, a clean slate, and in the place of preserved records, all that remained were stories told from shaking mouths and carved into stone. Think of it this way. If you wanted to erase an era without leaving a trace, what would you do? Fire leaves ashes. War leaves ruins. But water swallows. Water smooths edges, scatters, buries, and masks. Water makes the impossible seem like it never existed at all. So, when the flood stories say it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, or when the seas rose and swallowed entire continents, maybe that number isn't meant to be exact. Maybe it's meant to show totality, the point at which something crosses from memory into nothing. And yet, not all was lost. There are cracks in this nothing, voices that echo through ruins, artifacts that do not belong to the civilizations they're found in, technologies that reappear in different corners of the world with no explanation for how they spread. For instance, how could the ancient Sumerians know about distant planets like Uranus or Neptune, planets that even our most powerful telescopes struggled to track until recent centuries? These details appear in their cuneiform records, not as poetic metaphors, but with amazing clarity, nestled between star charts and observations of lunar cycles. Were they guessing? Were they blessed with extraordinary insight? Or were they simply recalling what had been lost? The same question applies to Egypt. Within the Dendera temple complex, deep in the underground chambers, the Dendera light appears in relief. A strange object resembling a modern electric bulb complete with filament-like snakes and a power cable-like extension held by figures. To our eyes, it's uncanny. Yet no soot marks have been found in these ancient corridors despite their extensive use. So if not torches, what lit their path? What if we're mislabeling electricity as myth, mistaking echoes of knowledge as artistic coincidence? Then there's the mystery of language, the sudden appearance of writing systems that seem to burst forth fully formed rather than evolving slowly. Sumerian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Indus script, each appears as a complete system with no earlier version. There is no record of how they learned to write. They simply began. And when you consider how hard it is for a species to invent language, this leap feels suspicious, almost as if they were inheriting something instead of creating it, almost as if they were remembering what if post-flood civilizations weren't inventing from scratch, but scavenging the ruins of the world that came before. What if the temples of later dynasties were built on the foundations of a forgotten science, reusing the stones of a destroyed world to build their myths? Take Baalbek. The Roman temple of Jupiter was clearly added on top of something much older. Its trilithon platform, 3 stones, each weighing over 800 tons, challenges even modern transportation. The Romans built over it, but they did not build it. The truth lies beneath in the giant stones no one talks about. The idea of a global reset extends beyond stone and water. It affects the very idea of human progress. There are signs that civilization didn't rise slowly from cave paintings to smartphones, but rather that it cycles, rises, falls, resets, rises again. Each time something is lost, each time something new is built over the bones of the old. So if the flood was one such reset, what caused it? Nature? Cosmic interference? Or something else? One theory stands out among the rest, not because it's the most exciting, but because it's the most unnerving, that the flood wasn't just natural, but intentional, a purge, a reset performed by design. Myths often describe the flood as an act of divine judgment. The gods, disgusted with the corruption of the world, decided to start over. Noah is warned. Utnapishtim is told. Manu is guided each time a chosen survivor is selected. The rest swept away. But who were the ones judged? Were they truly wicked? Or were they simply powerful? Were they builders of towers, explorers of the stars, keepers of knowledge, too dangerous to remain? Maybe it wasn't evil that drew the flood, but pride, a civilization that pushed too far, tapped into things they did not understand and became a threat to themselves or to something else. In this telling, the flood wasn't punishment, it was containment. Perhaps this is why modern archaeology resists these conclusions. It's easier to see history as a ladder, straight, upward, secure. The idea that there could have been a fall before our climb threatens everything that says we're not the first. And worse, that we may not be the last. What's most disturbing isn't that we might have forgotten a golden age. It's that we might be approaching another edge, that this cycle is about to turn again. Look around. The signs are all there. Melting ice caps, rising waters, unrest beneath the crust of the earth. If the ancients preserved anything in their myths, maybe it wasn't just a story. Maybe it was a warning. And if that's true, then we're not just archaeologists of the past. We are participants in the echo, a new chapter written on top of ruins. How long before the next flood comes? Not as myth, but as memory. Again, as we step deeper into the mysteries of the past, we find ourselves not only investigating ancient structures and hidden knowledge, but also dealing with the unspoken implications of what we uncover. There is an inherent danger in challenging the straight view of history that we hold dear. To entertain the possibility that an advanced civilization came before our own, one whose knowledge and power have been largely erased, forces us to question everything. Our understanding of human progress, our assumptions about technological development, and even our very identity as a species. Could it be that the lost civilizations left behind more than just ruins? What if they left behind a blueprint, a way of knowledge that if rediscovered could change everything we think we know about the universe? The evidence is scattered, hidden beneath layers of time and catastrophe, but it is there like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be put together. The more we search, the more we realize that the clues are not just in the stone and the soil, but in the stories themselves. Myths, legends, and ancient texts are not mere fairy tales. They are echoes of an earlier, more advanced time. Memories of knowledge and wisdom that were passed down through generations. Despite efforts to erase them, take for example the story of Atlantis. Long dismissed as a myth, Atlantis has captured the imagination of scholars and explorers for centuries. According to Plato, Atlantis was a great civilization that existed more than 9,000 years before his time. It was a society that had incredible technological advancements, including vast fleets of ships, energy sources beyond our understanding, and a deep understanding of the natural world. But the Atlanteans, according to the myth, became arrogant and corrupt, and as a result, they were destroyed by the gods in a single catastrophic event, the flood. The island sank beneath the waves, taking the great civilization with it. For centuries, Atlantis was thought to be nothing more than a made-up tale, a cautionary story about the dangers of pride. But what if Plato wasn't just telling a story? What if he was passing down a memory of a civilization that truly existed, one that was destroyed by a global disaster, its knowledge lost forever? The idea that Atlantis may have been real is supported by more than just myth. Researchers have found evidence of ancient cities underwater that have striking similarities to Plato's description. The Bimini Road, discovered off the coast of the Bahamas, consists of perfectly aligned stone blocks that appear to be part of a sunken city. Could this be the remains of Atlantis, or at least a fragment of it? Similarly, the discovery of ancient underwater structures in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean further suggests that there were once advanced civilizations that were swallowed by the sea. In the Gulf of Kumhat off the coast of India, underwater archaeologists have discovered what appear to be ancient stone structures far older than any known civilization in the region. These structures, which include streets, walls, and even what seems to be a grid-like pattern, could be the remains of a forgotten city lost to the waters of time. But the search for these lost cities is not just about finding physical remains of a past civilization. It's about uncovering a lost way of thinking, a different way of understanding the world, a different approach to technology, energy, and knowledge. What if the civilizations that came before ours didn't just build great cities and monuments, but had a deeper understanding of the natural world? What if their knowledge wasn't limited to the physical, but extended into realms we can barely understand? Astronomy, energy, resonance, and even consciousness itself. In the ancient texts of Sumer, the Anunnaki are described as gods who came from the heavens to teach humanity. But what if the Anunnaki weren't gods at all, but visitors from an advanced civilization passing down their knowledge to the people of Earth? The Sumerians had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, including detailed records of planets that were not discovered by modern astronomers until thousands of years later. How could they have known about these distant bodies? Could they have been the recipients of ancient wisdom passed down from a civilization that existed before the flood? Similarly, the ancient Egyptians, with their towering pyramids and detailed temples, are often thought to have been the first to build such huge structures. Yet, the accuracy with which the Great Pyramid of Giza was constructed, aligning perfectly with the cardinal points and the stars, suggests that its builders had a level of knowledge far beyond what is commonly credited to ancient cultures. What if the Egyptians inherited this knowledge from a civilization that existed before them, one that understood not just architecture but the very forces of nature that govern the universe? In South America, the ancient site of Pumapunku in Bolivia presents another mystery. The site contains massive stone blocks, some weighing more than 100 tons, that are cut with such accuracy that they seem almost impossible to have been shaped with the tools available to the pre-Incan cultures. Some believe that the site was built by a lost civilization, one that had knowledge of advanced engineering techniques far beyond the capabilities of the ancient people who are credited with its construction. Could Pumapunku be the remains of a civilization that existed before the flood? A civilization whose knowledge was passed down through the ages? The search for the lost way of thinking is not just about finding ancient cities and monuments. It's about understanding what those cities and monuments represent. They are symbols of a lost understanding, an understanding of the natural world, of the forces that govern the universe, and of the hidden knowledge that has been passed down through the ages. The flood may have wiped away much, but it did not erase everything. The clues are there, hidden beneath the ruins, waiting to be uncovered. And, as we continue to search for the lost knowledge of the past, we must ask ourselves, what if we are not the first advanced civilization? What if the knowledge we have gained is only a fragment of what once was? What if, like the civilizations before us, we too are standing on the shoulders of giants, inheriting the knowledge of a forgotten world? And what if, just like the lost civilizations of the past, we too are heading toward a reckoning, a reset that will wipe away our understanding and force future generations to rebuild once again? The flood may have been a catastrophe, but it may also have been a trigger, a reminder that knowledge is cyclical, that civilizations rise and fall, and that the search for truth never ends. As we uncover the remains of the past, we may one day find that the lost way of thinking isn't just a relic of history, it is the key to our future. As the flood stories and ancient ruins begin to come together, there is an unsettling thought that begins to form. The lost civilization that came before us was not just advanced in its understanding of technology or astronomy, but in its ability to harness the power of the earth itself. What if the ancient world wasn't just about building cities and monuments, but about tapping into the very forces that govern our planet, forces that modern science has only begun to understand? But if their knowledge of energy, resonance, and the natural world was the true secret to their power. Throughout history, we've seen the remains of ancient civilizations that seem to have knowledge far beyond what we believe was possible for their time. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Angkor Wat, the stone sites of South America, they are not just architectural marvels. They are precise alignments with the stars, with celestial events, and with the forces of the earth. But what if these structures were not just built for religious or ceremonial purposes? What if they were designed to harness a deeper hidden energy? An energy that was understood by the builders but is largely lost to us today. In the ancient world, there was a deep connection between the natural world and human civilization. This connection was reflected in the way the ancients built their cities and monuments, aligning them with the stars, the Earth's magnetic field, and even the flow of energy through the planet. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned with the cardinal points of the compass with such accuracy that it seems almost impossible to achieve with the tools and knowledge available at the time. The pyramid's construction is not just an architectural feat, it is a reflection of an understanding of the Earth's energy fields, an understanding that we are only beginning to rediscover. The theory that ancient civilizations may have used the Earth's natural energy for practical purposes is not new. Researchers like Christopher Dunn and others have suggested that the Great Pyramid was not just a tomb, but a massive energy device, perhaps a generator harnessing the electromagnetic forces of the Earth to produce energy. Dunn's theory is based on the idea that the pyramid's internal chambers and shafts are designed to channel energy in a way that could have powered devices or even entire cities. But how did the ancient builders know how to design such a structure? How did they understand the subtle forces of the Earth in ways that modern science is only now beginning to explore? If the Great Pyramid was in fact an energy generator, it would explain the accuracy of its construction and its alignment with the stars. But it also raises a deeper question: what other sites built by other ancient civilizations might have been designed with the same purpose in mind? Could the stone structures of Stonehenge, the massive stone blocks of Pumapunku, or the perfectly aligned temples of Angkor Wat also be designed to harness and manipulate the energy of the Earth? What if these sites were not just ceremonial, but functional, built to channel and amplify the Earth's natural forces? The connection between ancient civilizations and the Earth's energy fields may not be as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, many ancient cultures, including the Egyptians, the Maya, and the Chinese, believed in the existence of ley lines, mysterious lines of energy that crisscross the Earth, connecting sacred sites and natural landmarks. These ley lines were thought to carry powerful invisible forces, and many ancient temples and monuments were built along these lines to tap into that energy. In China, the practice of feng shui, which involves the careful placement of buildings and objects to harmonize with the Earth's energy, suggests that the ancients had a deep understanding of how the Earth's forces could influence human life. But what if the ancient world went even further? What if the knowledge of these energy lines was not just spiritual or metaphysical, but practical? What if ancient civilizations used these lines to power their cities, to communicate over long distances, or even to manipulate the environment? Could it be that the ancient people understood the Earth as a living, breathing organism, one that could be tapped into for power, healing, and enlightenment? One of the most fascinating aspects of this theory is the idea that the lost civilization that came before us may have had a technology that we can't even imagine. A technology based not on electricity, burning fuel or mechanical power, but on the natural energy of the Earth itself. This energy may have been harnessed in ways that we are only beginning to understand. For example, some researchers believe that the ancient Egyptians may have used sound resonance to lift and move massive stone blocks by vibrating the stones at the right frequency. They may have been able to reduce their weight and move them with ease, an idea that is supported by modern research into the power of sound and resonance. If this theory is true, it would mean that the ancient world had a completely different understanding of technology, one that was based not on machines or tools, but on the fundamental forces of nature. It would also mean that the civilization that existed before the flood was far more advanced than we have ever imagined. They may have had access to a kind of energy that modern civilization is only beginning to rediscover. But the question remains, what happened to this knowledge? Why was it lost? Did the flood erase it? Or did something else happen to cause this knowledge to be forgotten? The evidence suggests that the knowledge was not completely wiped out. It may have survived in fragments, passed down through secret societies, encoded in ancient texts, and hidden in the ruins of long-forgotten cities. But much of it was lost, buried under the rubble of time and catastrophe. Perhaps just as the flood destroyed the physical structures of the lost civilization, it also erased the understanding of the natural forces that powered those civilizations. Perhaps just as with the stone ruins that remain, the knowledge was deliberately hidden away by the survivors, those who did not want the world to know the truth about what had come before. What if instead of being completely wiped away, the knowledge was hidden, protected, and preserved for a future time when humanity would be ready to rediscover it? As we continue to explore the mysteries of the Earth's hidden energies, we may one day unlock the secrets of the lost civilization. What if the flood was not just a disaster, but the beginning of a new chapter in the history of human understanding? one that would eventually lead us to the rediscovery of the lost knowledge of the Earth. And what if, in the process, we uncover a power so deep that it could change the course of history once again? As we continue to explore the traces of an ancient, forgotten world, one theme emerges more and more clearly. The lost civilizations that came before ours were not only masters of the Earth's energies, but also had a deep understanding of the cosmos. What if the flood didn't just wipe away their cities and their technologies, but also erased their close knowledge of the stars? What if they knew things about the universe that modern science is only beginning to uncover? The evidence scattered across the ruins of ancient sites points to a civilization whose relationship with the sky was not just one of observation, but of deep interaction. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to the ancient temples of South America, many of the world's most mysterious sites are aligned with celestial bodies in ways that are amazing in their accuracy. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned so perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass that it is difficult to imagine how this could have been achieved without advanced astronomical knowledge. The same is true for many other ancient sites such as Stonehenge in England, the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and the ancient city of Teotihuacan in Mexico. What is remarkable about these structures is not just their alignment with the Earth, but their alignment with the stars, the sun, and the planets. Evidence that the ancients were not simply building to honor gods, but were deeply connected to the movements of the cosmos. In many ways, the ancients were not just architects. They were astronomers, engineers, and cosmologists. In Egypt, the pyramids were not only tombs for pharaohs, but symbolic representations of the stars. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaohs became one with the stars after death, joining the gods in the heavens. The pyramids themselves, with their precise alignment to the stars, were thought to help with this journey. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned with the star Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, which was of immense importance to the ancient Egyptians. The rising of Sirius marked the beginning of the Nile flood, a time of great importance for farming and ritual. The alignment of the pyramid with this star was not just symbolic, it was practical, designed to help the pharaoh's soul rise to the stars. Similarly, in Mesoamerica, the ancient Maya were obsessed with the movements of the heavens. Their calendar, one of the most accurate ever created, was based on careful observations of the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. The Maya also built massive pyramids and temples aligned with the stars. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen, for example, is precisely aligned with the sun's movements during the equinox's casting, a shadow that forms a serpent, slithering down the steps of the pyramid. This alignment was not just a feat of engineering, it was an expression of the Maya's deep understanding of celestial cycles and their belief that the heavens had a direct influence on life on Earth. But it wasn't just in Egypt or Mesoamerica that the stars played such an important role. Across the globe, ancient cultures were connected to the rhythms of the heavens. In ancient China, the practice of feng shui, which involves harmonizing human environments with the natural forces of the earth and sky, reveals a deep understanding of the relationship between the land and the stars. In the Andes, the ancient Inca built their cities and temples with careful attention to the movements of the stars and the sun. Even in the far reaches of Polynesia, ancient navigators were able to navigate vast distances across the Pacific Ocean by using the stars as their guide. The alignment of these ancient sites with the stars suggests that the people who built them were not just observing the heavens, they were interacting with them. It's as if the knowledge of the stars was not just for practical purposes such as farming and navigation, but was deeply woven into their spiritual and philosophical understanding of the world. The stars were not just distant lights in the sky, they were alive with meaning, and the ancients believed that by aligning their monuments with the stars, they were tapping into a deeper cosmic order. But if the ancients understood the cosmos in this way, how did they come by such knowledge? Did they observe the stars for thousands of years, building up their understanding over time? Or did they inherit this knowledge from an older, more advanced civilization, one that had already charted the heavens long before them? The idea that ancient civilizations may have inherited astronomical knowledge from a lost civilization is not as far-fetched as it might seem. After all, the accuracy with which the Egyptians, Maya, and others built their monuments suggests that they had access to a level of knowledge that was far beyond what we typically associate with ancient peoples. One of the most interesting aspects of this theory is the idea that the knowledge of the stars and the cosmos was passed down through secret societies, religious orders, or spoken traditions. Perhaps the survivors of the Great Flood who were left to rebuild civilization held on to the knowledge of their ancestors. This knowledge was encoded in the monuments they built, passed down through rituals, and hidden in plain sight for those who knew how to look. Over time, much of this knowledge may have been lost, but pieces remain in the myths, legends, and astronomical alignments of ancient cultures. It is also worth considering that the lost civilization that came before the flood may have had a technology that allowed them to interact with the cosmos in ways that are unimaginable to us today. Could they have had telescopes or other instruments that allowed them to see the stars with incredible clarity? Could they have had a deeper understanding of celestial mechanics? Perhaps even using the stars to predict future events. If they did, this knowledge may have been passed down in the form of sacred texts or encoded in the construction of their monuments, waiting to be rediscovered. The flood may have been a catastrophic event, but it wasn't just a physical one. It may have been a cosmic reset, wiping away not just cities and technologies, but the very understanding of the cosmos that had been passed down from the stars. The survivors of the flood may have rebuilt civilization, but they did so with a broken understanding of the stars and the universe. Over time, this understanding faded and the great monuments they left behind were reduced to rubble, their true purpose and meaning hidden by time. As we continue to explore the ruins of these ancient civilizations, we are left with a haunting question. Did the ancients truly understand the stars as we now believe? Or did they know something far more deep, something that was lost in the flood, but that we may one day rediscover? Could the knowledge of the stars hold the key to understanding not only the past but the future as well? There is an ancient saying, as above, so below. This simple phrase captures the deep connection between the heavens and the earth, a connection that has been recognized in cultures across the globe for thousands of years. In the ancient world, this connection wasn't merely philosophical, it was practical, tangible, and woven into the very fabric of their architecture, culture, and understanding of the cosmos. The ancients knew that the earth was not just a static rock floating in space, it was an active participant in a larger cosmic dance, and so were they. But the question remains, how did they come to understand such a deep connection? And what happened to this knowledge after the flood? One theory that continues to gain support is that the lost civilization that came before the flood had a deeper understanding of the planet's energetic and geological forces. It's not simply that they understood the physical earth, but that they understood the vibrations, frequencies, and energies that fill the planet. Could it be that the ancients knew how to communicate with the earth itself, using sacred geometry, frequency, and resonance as a kind of universal language? What if the stones, monuments, and pyramids they built were more than just physical structures, but were encoded with this language? A language that could tap into the very forces that govern the earth. This idea is not as far-fetched as it may seem. After all, many ancient civilizations from the Egyptians to the Maya were deeply connected to the cycles of the earth and sky. Their temples, pyramids, and other huge structures were not just aligned with celestial bodies. They were built with an understanding of the earth's natural rhythms. The ancient Egyptians, for example, constructed the pyramids with an accuracy that aligns them not only with the stars, but also with the earth's natural ley lines, mysterious lines of energy that are believed to crisscross the globe. These lines, sometimes called dragon lines, are thought to connect sacred sites and natural landmarks, and many ancient structures were built along these lines to harness the earth's energy. Similarly, in China, the ancient practice of feng shui was based on an understanding of the earth's natural energy fields. It was believed that the placement of buildings, roads, and even graves could influence the flow of energy or qi through the land in many ways. Feng shui was a form of communication with the earth, a way of aligning human activity with the natural forces of the planet. The ancient Chinese believed that, by understanding the earth's energy, they could create harmony and balance in their lives. This knowledge of the earth's energies may have been passed down from an even older civilization, one that had a deeper understanding of the planet's forces. The idea that the ancients were not simply building structures, but were communicating with the earth itself is supported by the discovery of sacred geometry in many ancient sites. Sacred geometry is the study of geometric patterns and shapes that are believed to hold special meaning. These patterns, such as the golden ratio or the Fibonacci spiral, appear throughout nature, from the arrangement of leaves on a tree to the shape of galaxies. In ancient cultures, sacred geometry was not just an abstract concept, it was a tool, a way to communicate with the natural world and tap into the hidden energies of the earth. The pyramids of Egypt are perhaps the most famous example of sacred geometry in action. The shape of the pyramid itself is believed to represent the coming together of cosmic and earthly energies. The pyramids are built on precise mathematical principles, and their proportions are thought to align with the natural rhythms of the earth and the stars. It's as if the ancient Egyptians were building a physical show of the cosmic order, a structure that could channel and amplify the energies of the earth and the heavens. But the mystery doesn't stop there. The ancient Maya also used sacred geometry in their temples and pyramids. The pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza is aligned with the sun's movements during the equinoxes, casting a shadow that forms a serpent which then slithers down the steps of the pyramid. This alignment is not just a feat of engineering, it is a form of communication with the earth, a way of marking the cycles of life and death, growth and decay, in perfect harmony with the natural world. The Maya understood that the earth's cycles were closely connected to the movements of the heavens, and they used this knowledge to create a spiritual and physical connection between the two. The idea of sacred geometry and the earth's energetic forces extends beyond the Americas and Egypt and Europe. The stone sites of Stonehenge and Karnak also reflect an understanding of the earth's rhythms. The stones at Stonehenge, for example, are arranged in such a way that they align with the solstices and equinoxes, marking the changing of the seasons and the passage of time. The placement of these stones suggests that the builders of Stonehenge had an understanding of the Earth's natural cycles, and they used this knowledge to create a site that was both a celestial observatory and a temple to the forces of nature. In all of these examples, we see a common thread. The ancient civilizations that came before us were not merely observers of the natural world. They were active participants in it. They understood that the Earth and the stars were not separate from them but part of a larger cosmic system, and they used sacred geometry, alignment, and resonance to communicate with these forces. But the flood, it seems, may have wiped away not only the physical structures of these civilizations, but also their understanding of how to tap into the Earth's energy. Perhaps this is why so many ancient civilizations, even those that survived the flood, left behind clues about their connection to the Earth. The knowledge was never truly lost. It was encoded in the monuments they left behind, in the stories they told, and in the rituals they performed. Over time, this knowledge was passed down through secret societies, hidden in sacred texts, and preserved in the architecture of later cultures. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the past, we are left with the tantalizing possibility that the ancient world held a secret that could unlock a new understanding of the Earth and the cosmos. If we could figure out the language of the Earth, if we could learn to communicate with its natural energies, what might we discover? Could this knowledge be the key to solving some of the greatest challenges facing humanity today, from energy crisis to environmental destruction? And if so, how much of this ancient wisdom is still hidden beneath the surface, waiting for us to rediscover it? The flood may have been a moment of destruction, but it was also a moment of transformation. A transformation that may one day lead us back to the lost knowledge of the Earth. And when we uncover it, we may find that the Earth has been speaking to us all along, waiting for us to listen. If a flood truly swept across the world and wiped out an advanced civilization, the logical question isn't just what was lost, but what or who survived. Because despite the size of such a catastrophe, traces remain. Scattered myths, lingering technologies, fragments of language, and always the recurring image of a figure, a sage, a guide, a stranger from the sea or sky who emerges after the waters go down, bearing wisdom. Some call them gods, others describe them as men of great height and strange appearance. In every culture, these survivors become the seed of the new world. What if they weren't gods in the divine sense, but survivors of the old one? The pattern is almost too precise to be accidental. In Mesoamerican myth, the feathered serpent arrives from across the ocean, bringing the arts of farming, medicine, and astronomy. In the Andean world, Viracocha emerges from the waters of Lake Titicaca after a great flood, teaching civilization to a people left scattered and broken. In Egypt, Thoth, often represented with the head of an ibis, teaches writing, architecture, mathematics. In India, the sage Manu survives the flood and is instructed by a divine fish on how to rebuild the world. In Sumeria, Oannes, a strange amphibious being, rises from the sea and brings forbidden knowledge to the early people. These aren't isolated myths, they are echoes, and they all say the same thing. Someone came after the flood, someone who remembered. What's fascinating isn't just that these beings taught civilization, they taught the same civilization: farming, writing, astronomy, engineering, the essential skeleton of any complex society. If these were just myths, why are the teachings so consistent across oceans and continents? Why do these civilizing gods always bring the same gifts in the same order? Perhaps they weren't introducing new ideas at all. Perhaps they were reintroducing old ones, salvaging what they could from a world that had been erased. The theory that the world was re-civilized by a group of post-flood survivors has gained ground in alternative archaeology circles. These weren't just lone refugees. They were keepers of memory. Pieces of a destroyed age. Engineers, scientists, builders, individuals who carried with them the intellectual DNA of the lost civilization. In a shattered world, they became the culture bearers, planting seeds where they could, and over generations, those seeds sprouted into the first official civilizations. Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley. But if these survivors did exist, where did they come from? And how did they survive? Some guess they escaped to the highlands, far from the coastal regions most vulnerable to the flood. Others suggest they fled underground into cavern systems whose entrances are still found in myth and sacred architecture. The labyrinths, the hollow mountains. There are stories and Hopi lore of people being led underground by ant-like beings during a time of destruction. Tibetan monks speak of Agartha, a hidden city beneath the Himalayas, lit by a sun that never sets. Even in European mystery teachings, the idea of inner-earth civilizations continues. Could the survivors of the flood have gone below, preserving what they could until it was safe to come out again? And what about the knowledge they carried? Much of it may have been lost, unable to be translated, unable to be taught, or simply forgotten. But some fragments survived. The earliest records of ancient civilizations do not read like the birth of knowledge. They read like the rediscovery of it. The first Sumerian tablets do not describe inventing the wheel. They document using it. The first Egyptian inscriptions do not experiment with pyramid building. They already know how. The Vedas of India are not trial and error. They begin with complexity as though compiled from something older. The question then becomes, how was this knowledge preserved? In some myths, the knowledge was stored in tablets, stone, gold, even crystal. In others, it was written in structures themselves. Temples, pyramids, observatories, these weren't just places of worship, but vaults of encoded information. The geometry, the alignment, the proportions all act as containers for wisdom, waiting for the right eyes to figure them out. In ancient Egypt, there is mention of the books of Thoth, sacred texts containing the foundation of all knowledge hidden away, so mankind would not destroy itself with their contents. In the Papal Va speaks of past ages and secret wisdom buried beneath temples. In Islamic tradition, there are tales of pre-flood scriptures written by the prophet Enoch, often associated with Enoch, that were hidden before the coming of the flood. And then there is Enoch himself. In the apocryphal book of Enoch, he is taken to the heavens by beings of light, shown the mechanics of the stars, the calendar of time, the secrets of earth and heaven. He writes it all down in books, and his knowledge becomes a curse and a gift, something too powerful to remain unchecked. Could Enoch be a story reflection of the survivor, the sage who carried forward the last pieces of an older world? But what if some knowledge was never passed down? What if it was hidden, not because it was dangerous, but because it couldn't be understood anymore? There are objects found across the globe that challenge explanation. The Baghdad battery, a clay jar that seems to function as a primitive galvanic cell. The Phaistos disk, a fired clay tablet covered in a script no one has yet figured out. The Antikythera mechanism, a bronze clockwork computer over 2,000 years old, capable of predicting eclipses and planetary alignments. Each of these items, if isolated, could be called a strange thing, but together they hint at a deeper pattern, a technology that doesn't fit the story we've been told. Maybe these artifacts aren't inventions from scratch. Maybe they're leftovers, memory fragments, pieces of a lost toolkit, and maybe the reason we don't understand them is that we've forgotten the way of thinking they came from. The survivors of the flood may have tried to teach, but how do you explain the concept of flight to someone who's never seen a wheel, or energy to someone who's never seen fire? Knowledge without context becomes myth. Technology without understanding becomes magic, so they hid it or coded it, or built it into stone where it could wait in silence. Today, we stand at the other end of that silence. The myths are still with us. The monuments still stand. And the sages? They're not forgotten. They've just been misnamed. The gods of old, the civilizing heroes, the watchers, the shining ones, they were never divine. They were memory. Flesh and blood echoes of a world that once was, and a warning of what could happen again. Because if there were survivors once, there might be again. And if a flood comes, not as water this time, but as fire, or silence, or forgetting, who will carry the seeds next? As we look further into the remains of a lost civilization, a new layer of mystery unfolds. What if the flood was not the end, but the beginning of something even larger? A cosmic cycle that echoed far beyond the earth. What if the true answers, the knowledge that was passed down through survivors, are not just buried beneath the earth or encoded in the ruins of temples, but hidden in the depths of the oceans and the expanse of the skies? The sea is an ancient keeper of secrets, its depths still largely unexplored by modern science. For thousands of years, the ocean has been a barrier, a boundary between known and unknown. The surface world and the depths, where many ancient myths tell of lost cities, forgotten gods, and civilizations swallowed by water. But what if the flood did not simply drown the cities, but preserved them, wrapping them in layers of silt and mud, waiting for humanity to rediscover them? One of the most interesting pieces of evidence for this idea is the discovery of underwater ruins across the globe. The most famous of these is the sunken city of Atlantis, which according to Plato existed thousands of years ago and sank into the ocean in a single day and night of catastrophic flooding. For centuries, Atlantis was dismissed as a mere myth, but over the last few decades, researchers and explorers have uncovered underwater structures that suggest otherwise. In the Caribbean, the Bimini Road, a series of perfectly aligned stone blocks, lies beneath the waters of the Bahamas. Some believe that these stones are remains of Atlantis, a city that once flourished and was then lost to the sea. Similar underwater structures have been found off the coasts of Japan, India, and even off the coast of Cuba, all of which suggest that there may have been more advanced civilizations than we previously thought, living at a time when the Earth was very different from how it is today. The idea that the flood was not a single event, but a global occurrence that caused big shifts in the planet's landscape is supported by geological evidence. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, for example, suggests that around 12,800 years ago, a comet or asteroid impact triggered massive climate changes, causing a series of mega-floods that reshaped coastlines, submerged cities, and wiped out entire species. This event, researchers believe, may have contributed to the end of the last ice age and the beginning of a new era for humanity. Could this catastrophic event have been the flood spoken of in ancient myths? A global disaster that wiped out a forgotten civilization and left only traces of its existence. But the ocean is not the only place where secrets lie. The sky too has been a place for ancient knowledge. The ancients understood the importance of the heavens not just for navigation or ritual but as a guide to understanding the forces of the earth. The stars in many cultures were not simply points of light, they were the keys to unlocking the mysteries of life itself. And the alignment of ancient monuments with celestial bodies is no accident. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned with the constellation of Orion, which in Egyptian mythology was associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The Maya too built their cities in alignment with the stars, and their calendar was based on the movements of celestial bodies. This was no simple observation. It was an attempt to understand the universe, to tap into its rhythms, and to use that knowledge for practical purposes. What if the knowledge of the stars and the sky was more than just symbolic? What if it was a map, a guide to lost knowledge? The idea that ancient civilizations were not just observing the stars, but were somehow in communication with them is a fascinating one. Could it be that the flood wasn't just a natural disaster, but a cosmic reset, a shift in the balance of power between Earth and the stars? Could the survivors of the flood have carried with them knowledge of the stars and the cosmos? Knowledge that was passed down through secret teachings and encoded in the very fabric of their monuments? Consider the role of sacred geometry in many ancient structures. The design of the Great Pyramid, for example, is based on the golden ratio, a mathematical constant that appears throughout nature. From the spiral of galaxies to the arrangement of flowers in a sunflower, sacred geometry used in the construction of temples, pyramids, and even entire cities was believed to harness the energy of the earth and the cosmos. The idea that these structures were built according to cosmic principles suggests that the ancients were not merely constructing buildings but creating a relationship between the earth, the heavens, and the forces that govern both. In ancient cultures, the idea of the heavens as a realm of hidden knowledge is widespread. In the Bible, for example, the Book of Enoch speaks of an ancient wisdom that was passed down by divine beings who taught humanity the secrets of the stars and the universe. In the Sumerian myth of the Anunnaki, gods from the heavens came down to earth, bringing with them knowledge of farming, metalworking, and astronomy. And in the Hindu tradition, the god Vishnu is said to have taken on many forms, one of which was as a divine fish that saved the sage Manu from the flood, carrying with him the knowledge of the previous world.
What caused it? The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests a dramatic explanation that a broken comet or asteroid struck the Earth or exploded in the atmosphere. This celestial event could have caused massive wildfires, shock waves, and the melting of vast ice sheets, triggering the mega floods that many cultures would later describe in their myths. In other words, the fire came first, then came the water. Tiny evidence from North America, such as layers of carbon-rich black mats, nanodiamonds, and unusual high-temperature melt glass, points to intense heat and widespread fires consistent with an impact event. These findings are not isolated. Similar layers have been found on other continents, as if a single catastrophic event affected the entire planet. Could this be the moment when the ancient world, the world before ours, came to its end? What's interesting about this hypothesis is that it matches the emotional rhythm of the flood myths. Fire, chaos, destruction, then cleansing, then silence. But fire didn't just fall from above. It rose from beneath as well. Disasters are rarely single. A blow from the sky could easily set off earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. And these would do what water could not: bury, not just flood and erase, but compact and hide. What might now lie under lava flows or sealed within hardened ash could be entire cities preserved like insects in amber. There are hints of this beneath the Mediterranean and parts of the Pacific, where sonar imaging has revealed vast formations under hardened mud that were once flat land, submerged and then buried. And the stories once again echo this pattern. The ancient Indian Mahabharata doesn't describe a peaceful golden age ending in a flood. It ends with a war that unleashes weapons of such intensity the earth shakes and the sky is torn apart. Fire rains down. Entire cities are turned to ash. In the ancient text, survivors speak of skin peeling like fruit and water boiling in the riverbeds. It sounds like poetic license, until you compare it to the effects of radiation burns. Until you consider that in Rajasthan, near a site called Jodhpur, scientists have discovered radiation levels in the soil similar to those found at nuclear testing sites. No known explanation exists, and yet the pattern repeats: fire, flood, and silence. In Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known huge temple complex built over 11,000 years ago, something even more curious happens. It is not destroyed. It is deliberately buried, not by a catastrophe, but by human hands, as if the builders wanted to hide it, as if they knew something was coming, and that only burial would preserve their work. Why? What did they fear? Could it be that the survivors of the flood, the sages, the culture bearers, the scattered pieces of the lost civilization, understood that the Earth's surface was no longer safe? That knowledge had to be preserved in stone, in symbols, and then hidden from the chaos that followed. This idea recasts Göbekli Tepe not just as a temple, but as a time capsule, and it raises the question, what else was buried? What else did they hide? The answers may lie beneath our feet, not just in the seas or stars. Across the globe, there are places of geomagnetic strange things, regions where instruments fail, compasses spin, and gravity behaves in strange ways. These places, often remote and uninhabited, tend to group around ancient ruins. Could this be coincidence? Or were ancient builders tapping into something, an unseen energy, a planetary force we've forgotten how to use? Modern science hints at it. Telluric currents, natural electric currents that flow through the Earth's crust, are a real and measurable thing. Some modern engineers have even theorized that ancient stone structures may have functioned like tuning forks, amplifying or redirecting these currents. If so, the placement of ancient huge stones, Stonehenge, the Moai of Easter Island, the trilithons of Baalbek was not accidental. They were part of a larger planetary grid, a now dead circuit that once pulsed with energy. And maybe that's why the fire had to come. Because a civilization that could tap into the energies of the earth and the alignments of the sky without polluting, without burning fuel, without metal towers or wires, would have been godlike by our standards. And perhaps like gods, they became arrogant, or dangerous, or simply inconvenient. And whatever forces, natural, celestial, or otherwise, decided that such knowledge should not pass unchallenged, did what forces always do. They reset the board. It's easy to look back and dismiss these ideas as guesses, but history is written not by those who remember, but by those who survive. And perhaps the real story of our past is not one of slow, patient evolution, but of rise, disaster, and rediscovery over and over, fire, flood, and memory. So when we stare into the flames of ancient myth or trace the going down lines of vanished shorelines, we are not just reading history. We are reading warnings, messages left behind not by gods but by people who walked the earth before us. People who understood something we have yet to fully remember. As we stand on the edge of rediscovery, the echoes of the ancient world call out to us louder than ever. For centuries, we've believed ourselves to be the top of human civilization, the end result of a slow and steady rise from primitive beginnings to the modern age. But what if we've only been witnessing the latest chapter in a much older cyclical story? What if the flood, the fire, the destruction, and the rebirth aren't just isolated events, but part of a much larger repeating pattern? A pattern that repeats itself with terrifying regularity, wiping away the old and giving rise to the new. The idea of cyclical time isn't new. It has been embedded in the myths, religions, and philosophies of many cultures across the globe. The Hindus speak of the yugas, vast time periods that cycle between creation, preservation, destruction, and renewal. The ancient Greeks, too, had their own version of this cosmic cycle, shown in the myth of the four ages: gold, silver, bronze, and iron. In these myths, each age ends in destruction, only for a new one to begin, often with the survivors carrying with them the seeds of the previous world's knowledge. But what if these cycles aren't merely symbolic? What if they are rooted in something far more real, far more real? What if humanity has lived through multiple cycles, each one more advanced than the last, only to be wiped out by a global catastrophe? And what if we are now in this very moment living at the edge of another cycle? A moment when the Earth, or some higher force, will once again reset the clock. The ancient sages and prophets, it seems, always foresaw the end of one world and the beginning of another. In their wisdom, they left behind not just stories, but blueprints for survival. They encoded their knowledge in the very fabric of the earth, in the alignment of stars, in the geometry of their buildings, and in the rituals they passed down. These blueprints were meant to be rediscovered to guide future generations through the next great transition. Could it be that we are those generations? Could the rediscovery of ancient wisdom buried beneath the sands of time, beneath the oceans, or even within ourselves be the key to understanding not just our past, but our future? What if the ancient world didn't just fall, it evolved? And we, the inheritors of this new age, are the ones to unlock the forgotten knowledge of the previous world, to rebuild not just society, but civilization itself. This idea is perhaps most deeply captured in the concept of the hidden wisdom, or secret knowledge, that runs through the veins of many ancient traditions. From the secret societies of Egypt to the ancient mystery schools of Greece, from the alchemical traditions of medieval Europe to the Sufi teachings of the Islamic world, there has always been a thread of wisdom passed down through the ages, preserved in symbolic form, hidden from the masses, but meant to be understood by the few who were ready. Could these secret teachings be the pieces of the lost civilization? Could they be fragments of knowledge handed down from the survivors of the flood, encoded in allegory and metaphor, waiting for a time when humanity would be ready to understand them once again? And if so, what do these teachings tell us? What are they preparing us for? Across the world, there are signs that something is stirring. Ancient sites, long believed to be the work of earlier primitive civilizations, are now being looked at with fresh eyes. Technologies once thought to be impossible in ancient times are now being rediscovered. From sound resonance and zero-point energy to advanced mathematics and the power of sacred geometry, the pyramids, Stonehenge, the temples of Angkor Wat, they are not just relics of a lost past. They are beacons, signals from another time, reminders of the wisdom that was once known and can be known again. The question now is whether we as a species are prepared to awaken to that knowledge. Will we as the next civilization pick up where the last left off? Or will we repeat the same mistakes, blindly walking down the path of destruction just as our ancestors did before us? There is a growing movement among some scholars and spiritual seekers who believe that humanity is on the verge of a great awakening. This awakening is not just spiritual, but intellectual and technological. It is a moment when the veils of ignorance will lift, and we will see the connections between the earth, the cosmos, and our own consciousness. It is a moment when we will understand that the ancient world was not primitive. It was just different, more connected, and more in tune with the rhythms of the universe than we are today. As we look to the stars, to the earth, and to the ancient ruins that surround us, we may be on the edge of rediscovering what was lost, not only in the flood, but in the fire that came before it. And as we unlock these mysteries, we may find that we are not the first advanced civilization to walk the earth, but simply the latest version in a long, long cycle of rebirth and renewal. The knowledge of the past is not lost forever. It is waiting for us to remember it. The flood, the fire, and the rebirth of civilization. They are not just stories of the past. They are the story of our future. And the question now is, will we be ready to embrace the knowledge and wisdom of the ancient world to guide us through the next great transition? Or will we allow the cycle to repeat, to reset once more? As we reach the edge of this vast journey through the mists of history and myth, we come to an undeniable conclusion. The cycle, while seemingly endless, is not without its turning points. The ancient world, which once stood as a shining beacon of advanced knowledge and technology, is now buried beneath the weight of time, catastrophe, and deliberate eraser. But the most deep realization comes not in understanding the destruction of that world, but in recognizing the potential for its rebirth. If the ancient civilizations truly did harness the Earth's energies, map the stars, and unlock the secrets of the cosmos, then perhaps they left us more than just ruins and mysterious writings. Perhaps they left us a key embedded in the very structure of the Earth itself, in the alignments of the stars, and in the codes woven into the sacred geometry of ancient temples and monuments. And now, as we stand at the threshold of rediscovery, the question becomes not what was lost, but how much of it is still waiting for us to awaken to it. This threshold we stand upon is not merely symbolic, it is real. It is a coming together of ancient wisdom and modern technology, where the discoveries of today are beginning to echo the knowledge of the past. We are on the verge of unlocking the secrets that have been hidden for thousands of years, hidden beneath the earth, beneath the ocean, and perhaps even in the very fabric of our own consciousness. What are these secrets? They are not just the physical pieces of an advanced civilization. They are not simply lost technologies or forgotten histories. They are the keys to a deeper understanding of the forces that govern the universe. They are the realization that the Earth is not a passive sphere floating through space, but an active living entity, a planet capable of communicating with those who understand how to listen. These secrets are encoded in the cycles of nature, in the movements of the stars, and in the energy fields that flow through the Earth. The ancients understood these forces. They knew how to tap into them, how to align their buildings with the Earth's magnetic fields, how to use sound, geometry, and resonance to unlock the hidden power of the planet. But this knowledge was not meant to be kept secret forever. It was meant to be rediscovered. The flood, the fire, the destruction, they were not the end, but a pause, a moment of resetting. The survivors, those few who carried the knowledge forward, were not just the keepers of the past. They were the messengers of the future. And now, as we approach this moment of rediscovery, we are once again at the edge of unlocking that knowledge, of reconnecting with the wisdom of the ancients. But how do we reconnect? How do we rediscover this lost knowledge? The first step is in understanding that this knowledge was never truly lost. It has always been there, encoded in the ruins of ancient temples, in the myths of forgotten civilizations, in the cycles of nature itself. The stars, the earth, the oceans, they are not separate from us. They are part of a larger interconnected whole, a system that the ancients understood deeply. Their monuments were not just buildings. They were tools designed to channel and amplify the Earth's energy, to tap into the cosmic forces that govern our world. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Angkor Wat, the stone circles of Britain, they were not just places of worship. They were instruments designed to communicate with the Earth and the stars. And now in this new age, we are beginning to understand how to use these tools once more. As modern science and ancient wisdom come together, we are rediscovering the connections that have been hidden for thousands of years. Scientists are studying the Earth's magnetic fields, the energy of the sun, and the power of sound and vibration to unlock new forms of energy. Researchers are using modern technology to explore the ruins of ancient sites, uncovering hidden chambers, secret passages, and codes embedded in the stone. We are learning to listen again, to hear the whispers of the past, and to understand the language that the ancients spoke. This journey is not just about uncovering the past. It is about preparing for the future. The knowledge that was hidden by the flood, the fire, and the reset is not just a relic of a lost world. It is the foundation for a new world, one in which humanity can live in harmony with the Earth, harnessing its energy and tapping into the cosmic forces that govern the universe. This is not a perfect dream. It is a possibility, one that is within our reach. But it will require a shift in consciousness, a willingness to look beyond the limitations of our current understanding and embrace the wisdom of the ancients. The threshold of rediscovery is not just a moment in time. It is a process, a journey that we are all a part of. Each discovery, each breakthrough brings us closer to understanding the truth of our past and the potential of our future. We are standing on the edge of a new age, one in which the knowledge of the ancient world will once again light up the path forward. And as we move forward, we must remember that we are not the first to walk this path. We are simply the latest chapter in an ancient cycle, one that has been repeating for thousands of years. But this time, we have the opportunity to break the cycle, to learn from the past, to embrace the wisdom of the ancients, and to build a new world. The question now is, will we be ready? The veil between the past and the present grows thinner with each step we take toward rediscovery. For centuries, humanity has walked the earth, gazing upward to the stars, wondering about the knowledge that once was. The ancient cycles, the great flood, the fire from the heavens, they were not just isolated events, but part of a larger cosmic rhythm that continues to echo through time. And now, as we stand on the edge of rediscovering the wisdom of the ancients, we must ask ourselves, what does this knowledge mean for us today? The answers lie not in distant ruins or broken texts, but in our very relationship with the earth. We are beginning to realize that the ancient civilizations were not just masters of the heavens, but masters of the earth itself. They understood that the planet was not a lifeless rock, but a living entity capable of transmitting energy, information, and wisdom to those who knew how to listen. And as we reconnect with the Earth's energy, we unlock the potential for a future that is not bound by the limitations of our current understanding. The ancients understood the power of resonance, the ability to tune into the natural frequencies of the Earth and the cosmos. This knowledge was encoded in their monuments, temples, and sacred sites. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the stone circles of Britain. Each of these structures was designed not just as a physical marker, but as a channel, a way of connecting with the energies of the earth and the stars. These sites were not simply places of worship. They were places of power where the energies of the earth could be harnessed, amplified, and used for healing, creation, and transformation. As modern science looks deeper into the mysteries of energy and resonance, we are beginning to rediscover the principles that the ancients understood. From the study of electromagnetic fields to the exploration of sound frequencies and their effects on matter, we are on the edge of unlocking a new way of understanding the forces that govern the universe. This is not science fiction, it is science fact. The ancients knew something we are just beginning to understand. The Earth is a living, breathing organism, and it has the power to communicate with us, if we know how to listen. This process of listening, of reconnecting, is not just about uncovering lost technologies or forgotten wisdom. It is about shifting our consciousness, about seeing the world through a new lens, one in which we are not separate from the earth, but an important part of it. The cycle of destruction and rebirth, the fire, the flood, the reset. They were not the end, but the beginning of something new. And now, as we stand on the edge of this new beginning, we must ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to build? In ancient texts, there are repeating references to the Golden Age, a time when humanity lived in harmony with the earth, when knowledge was shared freely, and when the heavens and the earth were in perfect alignment. This age, according to many myths, was lost to the flood, to the fire, to the destruction of civilization. But what if the Golden Age is not a thing of the past, but a thing of the future? What if the knowledge of the ancients hidden for so long is not meant to be rediscovered just for the sake of nostalgia, but for the sake of the future? Could we as a species finally reconnect with the Earth in a way that allows us to live in harmony, not just with each other, but with the planet itself? The key to this new age lies in the putting together of ancient wisdom with modern understanding. The knowledge of the ancients was not just about technology, about the building of pyramids or the mapping of stars. It was about consciousness. It was about seeing the world as a living, breathing entity and understanding that our actions have consequences, not just for us, but for the earth itself. It was about tuning into the natural rhythms of the planet, aligning our lives with the cycles of the earth and the cosmos, and living in balance with the energies that flow through all things. This is where the true power of the lost civilizations lies, not in their physical achievements, but in their understanding of the earth's energy and how to work with it. The ancients knew that the earth was not a resource to be used up, but a living partner to be respected. They understood that the planet's energies could be harnessed for creation, for healing, and for transformation. And now, as we rediscover this knowledge, we have the opportunity to do the same. But the question remains, will we be ready? Will we be able to break free from the cycles of destruction and rebirth and create a world that is truly in harmony with the earth? The knowledge of the ancients is not a relic of the past. It is the key to the future. It is a blueprint for a new world. One that we can create if we are willing to listen to the earth, to the stars, and to each other. The flood may have erased much, but it did not erase everything. The seeds of the old world are still with us, waiting for the right moment to grow. And that moment is now. The threshold is before us. The cycle is about to turn again. And the question is not what was lost, but what we will choose to reclaim. Will we continue to repeat the mistakes of the past? Or will we step forward into a new age of enlightenment? One in which the knowledge of the ancients guides us to a future in balance with the earth and the cosmos. The answers lie within us, and the time to awaken is now. The moment of awakening is always a quiet one, almost unable to be noticed. It comes not with a grand revelation or sudden enlightenment, but in the slow, steady hum of change, like the first ripple of water breaking the stillness of a pond. The signs are subtle, hard to notice until you stop, take a breath, and realize how far the waves have traveled. We are standing on the edge of this moment. Now, as we peel back the layers of time, rediscovering the knowledge of the ancients, we face an undeniable truth. That knowledge is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. It is a force that has shaped the past and will shape the future. The question now isn't whether we will reclaim that knowledge, but how we will use it. What will we do when the door opens and the wisdom of the lost civilizations pours forth? The ancients understood this responsibility well. Their wisdom was not simply for personal gain or even for the betterment of their own societies. It was a stewardship, a way of living in harmony with the forces of nature, the rhythms of the earth, and the cycles of the cosmos. The ancient sages, the survivors of the great floods and fires, were the guardians of this knowledge. They understood that true power did not come from control or domination, but from balance and alignment. They were not conquerors, but stewards trusted with the task of preserving the knowledge of the old world and passing it forward when the time was right. And now that time has come. But as with all moments of transition, it is not without its challenges. For just as the flood and fire of the ancient world wiped away what had come before, we too must face the possibility that we may not be ready to handle the knowledge that is about to be revealed. Knowledge, when it is unlocked without wisdom, can be just as destructive as the ignorance it replaces. The ancients understood this. That's why they encoded their teachings in symbols, in myths, and in the very construction of their monuments, so that only those with the eyes to see and the heart to understand would be able to figure them out. This, then, is the next challenge for us to become the new guardians of this ancient knowledge. The lost civilizations trusted their wisdom to us, but with it comes a heavy responsibility. We must learn not just to use this knowledge, but to understand it deeply, to align ourselves with the earth and the cosmos in the same way the ancients did. Only then can we truly begin to rebuild not just the physical structures, but the understanding that once guided those civilizations. The guardians of the threshold are not mythical figures or distant gods. They are the ones among us who are ready to listen, to learn, and to share. They are the ones who understand that knowledge is not power for power's sake, but a tool for harmony and healing. The path to rediscovery is not one of blind ambition or reckless exploration, but one of reverence, patience, and alignment with the earth's energies. As we begin to unlock the ancient wisdom hidden beneath the surface, we must remember the lessons of the past. The flood was not just a punishment, it was a reset. It was a moment when the earth reclaimed its balance. In that moment, everything was washed away, except for the seeds of knowledge that remained, waiting for the right moment to grow again. We are those seeds now. The knowledge of the ancients is alive, pulsing beneath the earth and within the stars. It is in the alignments of the pyramids, the sacred geometry of temples, the symbols etched into ancient stones. It is in the natural rhythms of the earth itself, the movement of the sun, the cycles of the moon, the ebb and flow of the tides. The guardians of the threshold are those who understand that knowledge is not just stored in books or monuments, but in the very fabric of the world around us. The flood came and went, but it left behind something far more valuable than any city or civilization. It left us with a map, a guide, a roadmap for reconnecting with the earth and the cosmos. We are the ones who must now walk that path, using the wisdom of the ancients to guide us as we step into the future. The question is no longer what was lost, but what we will do with what is found. Will we repeat the mistakes of the past and fall into the same cycles of destruction and rebirth? Or will we rise above it using the knowledge of the ancients to build a world that is not just more advanced, but more aligned with each other, with the earth, and with the cosmos? The door is open. The threshold stands before us. It is up to us to step across it with the wisdom of the past and the hope for a new future. It never begins with thunder. Civilization doesn't rise in a blaze of fire or with the sudden hum of machines roaring back to life. It starts quietly, almost invisibly. An idea lit again, a pattern rediscovered, a resonance felt more than understood. The awakening we are now entering will not be televised or neatly documented. It will unfold like ancient roots breaking through modern concrete. Slowly, firmly, patiently, and as it does, we may come to see that what we thought was the future was always buried in the past. All over the world, people are beginning to listen again, not to leaders or headlines, but to the earth, the stars, their own intuition. The great monuments left by the ancients, once thought to be tombs or temples, are being looked at as tuning forks, as gateways, as maps. Not maps of land or territory, but maps of energy, of frequency, of consciousness. We are starting to hear the subtle music that has always been playing beneath the surface noise of civilization. It is the pulse of the forgotten world, steady, ancient, unchanged. This reawakening is not happening in laboratories or institutions, though some evidence may pass through their gates. It is occurring at the edge of perception, in the way patterns repeat across time and space, in the strange connections that refuse to be coincidences, in the unexplainable knowledge that arises in dreams, in moments of silence, in the awe before ruins and stars. It is the feeling that something old is returning, not from the sky above, but from deep within the earth, and deeper still, from within ourselves. We are beginning to remember. The remembering does not always come in words. Sometimes it comes as geometry, a spiral seen in nature, echoed in galaxies, storms, DNA, and ancient rock carvings. Sometimes it is a rhythm, the beating of a drum in a forgotten temple, the cycle of equinoxes, the movement of the Earth's axis traced in stone. Sometimes it is a number, 432, 144, 108, numbers that appear again and again, not just in ancient sites, but in the very harmonics of the planet. To most, these are curiosities, but to those who remember, they are reminders. Reminders of a civilization that saw the world not as parts to be conquered, but as a whole to be harmonized with. This is the core difference between the world we are leaving and the world we are remembering. The lost civilization was not simply advanced in terms of technology, it was advanced in terms of putting together. Their tools did not require outside fuel. They used resonance, magnetism, the power of thought. Their cities did not break nature. They flowed with it, aligned with it. Their knowledge did not divide subjects. It unified them. Spirituality, science, philosophy, and art were not separate. They were aspects of one truth. And it is that truth that is now beginning to rise again. But this time, it is not being handed down from on high. There are no sky gods coming down with tablets, no Atlantean kings arriving in shining ships. This time the knowledge is emerging from within. Each person who questions, who dreams, who follows a curiosity into a forgotten myth or a dusty ruin is part of the reawakening. Each person who looks at a giant stone, not as a curiosity, but as a message, is tuning into that ancient signal. Each one who senses there is more to the past than what we've been told becomes part of the living memory. And yet we must be careful. The ancients may have built with wisdom and harmony, but they too faced the consequences of being out of alignment. Some say the flood was nature's payback. Others believe it was self-caused through arrogance, through an attempt to go beyond natural limits, through an overreach. Perhaps they tried to open doors that were never meant to be opened. Perhaps they simply lost their connection. And once that connection was cut, the earth cleansed herself. The warning is encoded into every myth. Do not forget. Do not lose the rhythm. Do not separate yourself from the cycles that sustain you. We are now at the point in the cycle where remembering alone is not enough. We must act in accordance with what we recall. We must change our cities, our minds, our systems, not toward taking and division, but toward harmony and alignment. We must become sensitive again, not just to data, but to the subtle energies that flow beneath the surface. We must build not in defiance of nature, but in concert with her. This is the only way to prevent another reset, because the cycle always turns. That is certain. What is not certain is whether we fall with it or rise. And so the ancient world calls not for nostalgia, but for wisdom. It does not beg us to recreate its monuments, but to remember why they were built. It does not demand we uncover its secrets for the sake of spectacle, but for the sake of understanding. And understanding once reached must give rise to responsibility. The silent awakening is not a return to the past. It is a spiral rising, re-meeting the same point at a higher level. We are not meant to go back. We are meant to go forward, carrying with us the knowledge we left behind, re-putting together what was broken, honoring what was sacred, and weaving the old ways into the fabric of the new. The guardians of the threshold were never gatekeepers. They were reminders. And now we are the ones standing at the threshold. The next step is ours. All journeys end where they begin, but not as circles. They return like spirals, to the same point seen from a higher place. We began with a flood, with a world forgotten, and now we end with light. Not the blinding light of destruction, but the quiet golden light of knowing. Not remembering as memory, but as remembering, the piecing together of what was shattered. Now we see the shape of the pattern. We began with myths scattered and strange, stories of a flood, of giants, of gods falling from the stars, stories told around fires etched into stone, hidden in forbidden texts. each one seeming too fantastical to take seriously. And yet they all said the same thing. Something came before us, something great, something proud, and it fell. We followed the waters to the ruins. We saw the giant stones rising from jungles and deserts, from mountaintops and beneath the sea. We saw accuracy that should not have existed, alignments with stars we had no telescopes to observe. We saw memory encoded in stone, waiting for us to grow wise enough to decode it. We listened to the earth, the energies beneath our feet, the frequencies that hum through our bones. The ancients weren't trying to control the planet. They were dancing with it. Their temples weren't monuments to ego. They were instruments tuned to the song of the planet, singing in resonance with the stars. And in rediscovering that song, we began to hear the voice we'd forgotten was ours. Then came the fire, the fear, the warning, the understanding that the end didn't come only once. It comes often, when we forget, when we grow too proud, when we separate ourselves from the cycles that carry us. The ancients didn't just record disaster. They warned of repetition, but they also left us a choice. They left blueprints, not just for pyramids or calendars or machines. They left blueprints for alignment, for balance, for a way of living that doesn't see nature as resource or knowledge as control, but both as communion, a relationship of respect. This is where we stand now. Our technology hums louder than ever. Our cities reach higher. Our reach extends across the skies. But beneath the noise, a second movement begins to rise. Quiet, gentle, ancient. People turning back to the land. Eyes turned once again to the stars. Not for conquest, but for meaning. Minds waking from a long sleep. Feeling for the pulse that once beat beneath the pyramids. In stone circles, in sacred groves, in the silence before the flood. The cycle is returning to light. Not because the world is ending, but because it is remembering. And that is the final gift of the ancient ones. They didn't just build for themselves. They built for us. Their stories, their symbols, their songs. They weren't warnings of doom. They were instructions for rebirth, for what to do after, for how to rebuild, but this time without forgetting. We are the ones they were waiting for, not chosen by blood, but by timing, by readiness, by the simple courage to ask, what came before us, and why was it lost? Now we know, and now we can choose differently. This is not a return to the past. It is a return to the wisdom of the past, carried forward into a future that can hold it. The age of remembering is not nostalgic. It is luminous. And as the old knowledge stirs once more, not from stone, but from within, we realize the flood never truly buried the past. It just made us dig for it. And in that act of digging, of searching, of listening, we become the bridge between what was and what must come.